Why coffee wakes you up. The hidden science behind your morning cup part 2. Welcome back to Army. In the previous part, we discovered that coffee doesn't actually create energy. Instead, caffeine blocks adenosine, the chemical that tells your brain it's time to rest. But if that's true, another fascinating question appears. Why does coffee affect different people so differently? Perhaps you've seen it yourself. One person drinks half a cup of coffee and stays awake until midnight. Another drinks 3 large cups every day and barely notices any effect. How can the same chemical produce such different experiences? The answer begins deep inside our DNA. Scientists have discovered that the speed at which your body breaks down caffeine is influenced by a gene called CYP1A2. This gene helps produce an enzyme in the liver responsible for metabolizing caffeine. Some people inherit a version of the gene that works very efficiently. Their bodies remove caffeine relatively quickly. Others inherit a slower version. For them, caffeine remains in the bloodstream much longer. That means to people drinking the exact same cup of coffee at the exact same time may still have very different amounts of caffeine in their bodies several hours later. This is one reason why some people can enjoy an evening espresso and fall asleep with no difficulty, while others struggle to sleep after a single afternoon cup. But genetics is only part of the story. Your brain is also remarkably adaptable. Imagine walking into a bright room every day. At first, the light seems intense. After a while, your eyes adjust. The light hasn't changed, your brain has. A similar process happens with caffeine. When you regularly block adenosine receptors, your brain begins to compensate. Over time, it may produce more adenosine receptors. Think back to the parking lot we discussed earlier. If caffeine keeps occupying the available parking spaces, the brain responds by building more parking spaces. Now adenosine has new places to bind. As a result, the same amount of caffeine produces a weaker effect. Scientists call this tolerance. Tolerance doesn't mean caffeine has stopped working completely. It means your brain has adapted to its regular presence. This explains why many long-term coffee drinkers gradually increase the amount they consume. A single cup that once felt powerful may eventually feel completely ordinary. But what happens if that person suddenly stops drinking coffee? Within several hours, caffeine begins leaving the body. Those additional adenosine receptors remain. Now adenosine can bind to many more receptors than before. The brain suddenly receives a much stronger "you're tired" signal. This is why some people experience withdrawal symptoms, headaches, sleepiness, difficulty concentrating, low energy, irritability. Fortunately, for most healthy adults, these symptoms are temporary. As the brain gradually readjusts, the number of receptors returns closer to normal. This adaptation is one of the remarkable abilities of the nervous system. Your brain is constantly trying to maintain balance. Scientists call this homeostasis. Whether the change comes from temperature, hormones, sleep, or caffeine, the brain continually works to keep the body's internal environment stable. Now let's explore another common belief. Many people think coffee causes dehydration. Is that actually true? Caffeine can have a mild diuretic effect, meaning it may slightly increase urine production, especially in people who rarely consume caffeine. However, modern research shows that moderate coffee consumption still contributes to your daily fluid intake. In other words, a cup of coffee is not the same as losing an entire cup of water. You should still drink enough water throughout the day, but moderate coffee consumption does not automatically lead to dehydration in healthy adults. Another question scientists have investigated for decades is whether coffee is good or bad for health. Years ago, coffee often received a negative reputation. Today, the picture is far more complex. Coffee contains not only caffeine but also hundreds of naturally occurring compounds, including antioxidants. Large observational studies have suggested that moderate coffee consumption is associated with lower risks of certain diseases in many populations. However, it's important to understand the difference between association and causation. Just because two things are linked does not necessarily mean one causes the other. People who drink moderate amounts of coffee may also have different lifestyles, diets, or exercise habits. Scientists therefore continue studying exactly how coffee influences long-term health. What researchers generally agree on is that moderation matters. Too much caffeine may increase anxiety, interfere with sleep, raise heart rate temporarily, or make some people feel restless. Children, pregnant women, and individuals with certain medical conditions may need different recommendations from their healthcare professionals. This reminds us that there is no perfect amount of coffee for everyone. Human biology is wonderfully diverse. The best amount for one person may not be the best amount for another. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: coffee is powerful, but it can never replace sleep. If your brain has been awake for far too long, blocking adenosine can only hide fatigue for a limited time. Eventually, the need for sleep becomes too strong to ignore. No drink, no matter how popular, can fully replace one of the most fundamental biological needs of the human body. Today we've discovered why caffeine affects everyone differently, how the brain develops tolerance, and why coffee cannot truly replace sleep. But one final mystery remains. Could coffee actually help you live longer? What does the latest research say about coffee and diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and dementia? And how much coffee is considered too much? In the final part, Army will separate scientific evidence from popular myths and explore what decades of research really tell us about one of the world's favorite drinks. I'll see you in the final chapter of today's journey.